Now, before I launch into my story of the Baal Shem Tov, I would like to share with you a very nice tidbit of Hasidic folklore. There is an old tradition that when you tell a story about the Baal Shem Tov on Saturday night, that it is what is called in Hebrew a segula, which means it's propitious. It brings about, it becomes like a pipeline for parnasah, which means livelihood, making a living, money, for material sustenance. Why is Saturday night? Well, that's this fantastic time after the Shabbat. There's a special meal called Malava Malka, which means literally escorting out the queen. Who is the queen? The queen is the Shabbat. When we say Lochadedi, let us go greet the beloved, that is the Shabbos queen. And of course, when Shabbat ends, we want to see the queen out, and we do that with a very special meal called Malava Malka. And at that time, it's an old tradition to tell stories, and especially stories about tzaddikim. The stories about tzaddikim, holy men, and their blessings, and what was accomplished is an important introduction to the new week, where we go into the everyday life, and we need the encouragement that comes about through these wonderful, inspiring stories. But since the time of the Baal Shem Tov, it was especially propitious to tell us these amazing stories of the Baal Shem Tov, who was an absolutely legendary figure in every sense of the word. However, it is pointed out that there are three kind of inaccuracies in this tradition. One is that it does not need to be about the Baal Shem Tov. It could be about another righteous person as well. It does not need to be Saturday night. This effect is achieved when you tell it any time. And it doesn't actually only have to be propitious for good livelihood, but it brings us all other kinds of blessings as well, good health and happiness and so on. But surely when it's about the Baal Shem Tov, how much more that it will have this quality. But you need to know, when you hear a Baal Shem Tov story, that it's something unusual. In fact, there's almost in Yiddish, when you want to say something was incredible, you say it was a Baal Shem Tov, it was something like the Baal Shem Tov. So we need to understand something about miracles, and actually really think about it from a spiritual point of view. Miracles is not big news. God created the world. He established the rules of nature, and He is at liberty to dispose of them and to make exceptions to them when He sees fit. And generally, there's not plan A. But every now and then, like with the Exodus, splitting of the Red Sea, 10 plagues, a piercing of the natural order with God's direct intervention. Now, this key of transcending nature is also to some degree given to the righteous. The reasoning is very simple. They are people who cleave to God and annul their will to God's will. So to some degree, they are, through osmosis, also, in a sense, possessing this disability. And that is why we find, especially in the case of the Baal Shem Tov, but particularly if we look at the time when he lived. So just as we say God does not do a miracle for no reason, there needs to be some reason for it. So too surely the Baal Shem Tov didn't do incredible things without cause, but this was a generation which needed a especially strong boost of emunah, of faith, and revelation. And so the Baal Shem Tov stories are characterized by remarkable happenings, and this next story is going to be no exception. It deals with when he was a young man, around 20 years old. He was not yet known, and he and his colleagues, the hidden tzaddikim, would travel around giving encouragement to the simple folks. And so they entered a town called Brody, and as was his custom, he was speaking with the simple folks in the marketplace. But he noticed a remarkable thing. There was an old man, for all effects and purposes, not looking remarkable, bent over, sweating, very thin, with a large sack on his back. Indeed, he was a porter, in Slovak, a nosič, which was a known kind of a livelihood then, sometimes involving a horse and carriage, sometimes involving just a push cart, and sometimes, if the porter could not afford it, just carrying things on his back. That is how this Jew, whose name was Herschel, made his living. Herschel, by the way, is the Hebrew name Hirsch. It's Yiddish for tzvi. It means a deer. And what was unusual about Herschel, was that although he looked very simple and he was dressed in tattered clothing, and one did not see anything remarkable looking at his face or any other part of him, what was remarkable, which the Baal Shem Tov saw, was a pillar of brilliant fire above his head. Light. It was a light like the light which was above Moshe Rabbeinu's head, the head of Moses. If you read, of course, we hope we know from the Bible, from the Torah, it says that when Moshe exited his tent, there was a Keren Or. There were rays of light above his head. By the way, the word for the rays is Keren, and that same word in Hebrew can also mean a horn, and it is thought that that is why when Michelangelo made his sculpture of Moses, that he was made with horns. It's kind of a mistranslation. But this Herschel, the simple porter, had rays of light, a pillar of fire above his head, like the one that Moses had. But it was clear that nobody else noticed this. Indeed, not only did the locals not give him any special honor, but they made fun of him. They would say, Herschel, have a good day of carrying, Herschel, Trogges und and then they would sometimes call him Herschel Tzig. Tzig is a goat. We'll soon find out why. But he was a good sport about it. He would always respond, thank you. He would never get upset. He would always say, Seid gesund, you should also be healthy. And the Baal Shem Tov was determined to get to the bottom of the greatness, the spiritual greatness of the individual that resulted in this ray of light above his head. And he tried, he followed him around, he observed his ways, but could not get to the bottom of it. So finally, he prayed because he felt that it was very important to understand who this great individual was. And he even made a fast beginning from the end of Shabbat, and Sunday, and Monday, and Tuesday. And finally, after Tuesday, he decided he was going to end his fast. And he emerged from the synagogue, and who should he see but Herschel Tzig? And he approached him and said, Reb Herschel, I hear that you have very good goat's milk. Because in fact, the reason they called him Tzig is he had been married to a very special lady, Rachel Bas Leah, and she had passed away 10 years earlier. And from that time, he bought goats. He made a pretty good living. But almost all of the proceeds from his porter activities would go towards feeding these goats because they knew for some reason Herschel liked goat's milk. And because of having these goats and his goat's milk, he was given the epithet, the nickname Herschel Tzig, Herschel the goat. And so it was that Baal Shem Tov exited and asked him if he could buy some goat's milk for him. And at that point, Herschel says, with great pleasure, of course, I will not accept any money. Please come to my house. And they walked an hour to the outskirts of town, where he lived in a hovel, a very neglected home. And there they entered. And what happened after that, we'll hear in the very next clip.